Good evening, ladies. We are currently in week 3 of the book club that we all voted on. And the name of the book again is F Happiness: How Women Are Ditching the Cult of Positivity and Choosing Radical Joy. So I will tell you all that I've been enjoying this read because it has been challenging me. It's had me look at my healing journey a little differently. And it's also made me kind of question some things as far as mental health, how the I say industry, but I say that loosely, how it's set up, how important it is for you to have a really good therapist, all of the things. So one of our challenges was to continue with the joy journal. I will be honest and say I did not do good this week with the joy journal. If I'm honest, leading up to Mother's Day is always hard for me. So when I have moments like that, it is difficult for me to tap into that. So I promise you all, I will do better next week. But remember, I said no judgment if you don't do it. But I had to be honest and say that I did not do well on the joy journal this week. However, I did do well on the considering myself when decisions are being made a challenge. So you will have decisions every day. Some of them are small, some of them are big. But I will say that I was more mindful of how decisions would impact me, and that was decisions I could make myself or decisions that included my team at work. So I manage about 10 people. That includes, family decisions, being honest with where I am and where I've been. And so I encourage you, it won't be the challenge this week, but I do encourage you to continue your joy journal. And for those of you who do not know, the joy journal is just being daily, being mindful about the things that bring you joy, no matter how small. So some of the things were, spending time with family. I can say one thing that was awesome for me, that brought joy for me. I did not write it down, but it did happen. I know I previously told you on Fridays are usually our family day. And so we decided to go outside this Friday and spend some time with some close friends that we consider family. And it was so funny because when we went to visit them, it's been some time since we hung out. We just had a really good time. And they typically host all the time. But they've been having things going on, and so they haven't been able to host as often, or they just haven't hosted as often as they are used to. So I could tell just as much as we were enjoying they serving us, they cooked for us. It was great conversation, catching up on what's been going on. And it was good catching up. It wasn't like everything is a tragedy. And also I could tell it brought them just as much joy hosting a family, hosting someone, because they love to do it. So it was cool kind of to be in a different situation where we experienced joy from being in their presence, just spending time with them, and they experienced joy just from hosting us. And after it was over, they reached out and was like, "Thank you all so much for hanging out with us. We enjoyed, spending time with your family." And I made sure I let them know, hey, I'm glad that you all enjoyed it, but it was the thing I needed that I didn't know I needed. And I think those are the biggest blessings when you're just kind of going on with, the plans or whatever you're going to do, and it gives you something that you did not expect. So continue your joy journal this week as we lead up to leave week 4. We're pretty much halfway done with the book. And then I'm not sure if we'll give a new challenge this week. We'll see where the discussion goes as I talk about all the different things that kind of came to mind as I was reading the section that we're in right now. I will tell you that it was a lot of shocking stuff. You all may have known all this, but I was shocked at some of the things that I read, because one of the things that I appreciate about how Ariel Gore writes is that she is a psychologist. Like, she is licensed and all of those things, but she shares research and she shares history. So you don't just, like, right now in this space, in this time, mental illness is a big thing, that's a conversation that we're having on multiple platforms within families. It's not common in the brown community, and it's being more discussed even more in the brown community. And and when I say brown, I'm talking about minorities, so all inclusive of minorities. And so to read the history on how some of these things came about kind of made me glad that in the past it wasn't discussed because it wasn't enough information, and some of the motives of some people weren't pure. And so I'm kind of glad that our communities didn't jump on this too soon, but I'm also seeing how the culture can influence how we see things and how we move, and that's not always a good thing. So let's dive in. So one of the first things that she talks about, one of the first sections that we started was "Welcome to the Nation of Can-Do Optimism," and she talks about how in our country, in America, it's pushed that we are very positive and we're very smiley, and that's what's expected. You're expected to smile even when you're upset, when you're angry. And she talks about how many of the other emotions are frowned upon, not encouraged, or seen as negative because we live in a country where we're supposed to be positive. Now, I will say some of that has phased out with the heavy use of social media. And so I'll lean more on interactions with people in person because we know social media interactions in many cases are not positive. This is a tangent, but it's crazy how people that were not as verbal or weren't as opinionated externally, now they are a lot more opinionated now that they can hide behind the screen. And I say hide because many of the things people say, they would not say to the person, to their face. They would not address it in the way that they do online if they were face to face with people. And I feel like in this era of more social media, it has made us less personable and a lot more opinionated. And having opinions and expressing your opinions is not negative, but I will say how we express our opinions matters because the goal should not be to change how other people think, and you could potentially influence people's perspective, but I have a respect for people's personal experience, their personal beliefs, their personal space, and what they believe. Now, I will say that I am open always to saying if I agree or don't agree, but I think it's all about how it's presented. And I think in this space, it's cool because we're creating a space where we can talk about our opinions based on what she's presenting in her book. And it's an open dialogue about what we think, how we feel about it, with an understanding that we're not going to all agree. And many times our beliefs and our perceptions are influenced by our personal experience. And nobody has experienced my personal experience but me. Yes, people have gone through similar things as me, but they weren't raised by the same parents. They didn't grow up in the same environment. They did not have the same struggles. And so even perception of the same similar experiences can be very, very different. So into the optimism history, that's what I'm calling it. But one of the things that I paid attention to was when she was talking about the business of learning to look happy, how much money people have made with books, with magazines, with movies, with shows, all of that, what how to look happy. Not necessarily that you are happy or that you have done whatever needs to be done to create a life or an environment where you have joy. We have learned how to look like we are happy. It was interesting because she talks about the International Student Federation and how many students that were going to school here, how they had to be taught or warned, meaning told, hey, pay attention to this, that just because people in America are nice or they smile, it is not a reflection of relationship or even that they like you. It's just how we are. And so I want to talk about that a little bit because it's interesting that in other cultures, that interaction is a sign of relationship. It's a sign of connection. It's a sign that maybe we have something in common or that we enjoy being around one another. Literally, people coming here that are not a part of our culture had to be warned to not be naive and assume that because someone is nice, that they mean you well or that it's something positive, which means in many of their experiences, their culture is not like that. And so that lets you know how much this culture, these books, this way of life has influenced how we think, how we move, and how we interact with people. Um, and I say this all the time, I was shooketh because they were talking about just the history, where it came about, how it impacted the work environment. And they mentioned, or she mentions, Delta Airlines and how emotional management came into play in the 1970s in the workplace. And she talks about how the company spends $9 million on antidepressants for employees and dependents, which is a part of their emotional management within the workplace. So that tells me you did not want to take the time to teach people how to better communicate or better interact or better manage stress. They are more in the business of medicating people, maybe not with the correct support to make sure that the work environment is the way they want it to be. $9 million, $9 million, $9 million a year on antidepressants. And I will tell you, I am not anti-medicine. I know people that deal with depression. I know people that have done talk therapy and that helped them. I know people that have learned different ways to manage their depression. Talk therapy teaches you how to manage it, but they still have to take medication because of the other things that impact it. And I know people that just take medication and are not interested in the healing journey or going through the process of therapy or working through what may be causing the depression. So I know people, I'm connected with people in all of those categories. But what I read about and what I know and what I haven't experienced personally, but what I've seen, just with people connected to me that have decided, okay, you know what, I know something is wrong. I don't know what it is. And I'm going to do what I need to do to figure that out. So maybe I'll go to the doctor first and find out, do I have any health issues that are impacting my mood or how I feel? And then when that checks off, if they even do that, because some people don't do that, maybe they'll go to a therapist and their therapist may say, hey, you deal with depression. Have you considered medication? And then you have psychiatrists who will, take you through the strategies that you may or may not implement. They can write you medication. They can do all of those things. So I've never gone to a psychiatrist, but I have gone through to a therapist. And my therapist told me, hey, you deal with depression. But she did not immediately try to prescribe me anything. And in that state, when I first went to therapy, I was in pretty bad shape to me. But her job was to ask me questions, interact with me, dig a little to see where I was and to see if that was a need. Now, she did tell me, hey, as we talk, it is my job to pay attention to how you respond, what you say, how you interact. And if there are any things that bring concern, then we may bring some other strategies into place. That was her way of saying, if you're considering harming yourself or you're having thoughts of harming others, and sometimes they will directly ask you that question, but when you say no, they know how to ask around the question to get to the answer that they're looking for to see if what they are believing or thinking or observing is true. But one of the things that I did not need medication for my what I will call diagnosis. And so there are different situations where that happens. So she talks about her daughter who moves to LA, which was a good distance from home. And she was going to a college that was very intense. The school life was very intense. She was trying to be involved in, different organizations, and she was just having a hard time coping with the new environment and the workload. She was very homesick. She cried a lot. She had never experienced this before. And one of the things that the girl decided to do was she decided to go see a counselor. Great idea. I'm so glad you did. Somebody you can talk to that is physically there. She had a good relationship with her mom, so she was calling her mom, but her mom wasn't physically there. And also, her mom did not have the ability to be accessible all the time. So she said, let me see, maybe I'll get someone that is local, that kind of understands this culture, because it's different. This environment is different from what I'm used to. And it was interesting because one of the first things that the therapist said to her was that she might need to be medicated because it sounds like she deals with depression. So she goes on to say that she decided not to take that route, and she didn't leave school. She decided to stick it out. And one of the things that she noticed, paying attention to her surroundings, was that different places on campus, there were little notes, colorful notes, different buildings, different walls. It was colorful notes that had encouragement. And what she noticed was on her hardest days, she would end up seeing one of those little notes that said, "You can do it," or "I know it's hard, but push through." Or so someone that was most likely experiencing something similar to her came up with a solution potentially for themselves and for other students. I'm going to post encouragement all over campus because I know most students here are stressed out. They're away from home. They're dealing with a different level of stress. Many of them are overachievers because it's an Ivy League school, and they may have had a lot of pressure at home, and it might be pressure to perform, and whatever they're pursuing, their family might be counting on them, because we see that a lot with, different families. Maybe they're the first person to go to college and they don't want to fail, so there's more pressure put on them, all of those things. And she said every day that it was the hardest days for her, she would always run into a little sticky note or a little note that was on the wall. And it just gave her a little more encouragement to keep going. And she said it's so interesting that this was a conversation her and her mother had, was that their first suggestion when she went to the counselor was medication. But why wasn't it asking more questions first? Why do we live in a culture where they are ready to medicate us before they are really assessing how we are and where we are? Now, I will say there are some extreme cases where that might be necessary, but in her situation, she had met with that was her first time meeting with this counselor. And all they knew was she was overwhelmed. Sometimes she didn't want to get out of bed, and she was stressed, and she was extremely homesick. So why was the automatic assumption that she needed medication? Maybe she needed support. Maybe she just needed an opportunity to talk about how she was feeling because she was carrying that. Maybe she needed encouragement, like the little sticky notes on the wall. And clearly, that was one of the things she needed. And it was from a stranger. She will never know who that person was that was posting those notes on the different in the different buildings and the different locations. But that helped her get through her first year of college, where she was far away from home in an environment that was unfamiliar. So the question is, why do you think that many times people are ready to medicate first and ask questions later? And it's so interesting because I have seen that happen with other people. I was blessed enough to have a therapist that was not their immediate approach, but I have seen people experience that. And I think it's tragic, but let's just be honest. Think about when you go to the doctor and you have a symptom. I have a runny nose. My chest is hurting. Whatever the case may be, they run tests, but usually doctors are not trying to cure the root of the issue. Usually they give you medication that addresses the symptom. So if you're only giving me something to address the symptom and we're never digging deeper to figure out what is causing it, then we are not solving the problem. We are putting a Band-Aid over a wound, a deep wound. That's like breaking your leg and a doctor trying to create a cast with Band-Aids. That's what that is. So sometimes is medication necessary? Absolutely. But why aren't we focusing more on addressing the true issue? What is the root of why we feel the way we feel and why we are where we are? And many times people are not ready or they feel like they're not ready to address that. But I encourage you, if you are experiencing a symptom, whatever that may be, whether that be physically, emotionally, or mentally, yes, definitely consider getting help from a person that is well versed in whatever you are experiencing, but definitely also consider, is this person trying to make me feel better symptom, or are they trying to cure the actual root of the issue? Because anything that we are experiencing in our bodies is a symptom of something deeper. So I will say, so for example, for me, sometimes I can go so long and move so quick. It's so funny. My last blog was slow down, but I can do that and not be aware, because I'm doing so much moving, of where I truly am. So it's when my body responds. So I have the sweats. I'm a sweater. I am. When I'm stressed, I sweat. And that's something that catches my attention because it is so uncomfortable. Sometimes I'll get headaches. I never get headaches except if I'm super stressed out. I get a little eye twitch. That's usually an indication. And the funny thing is, I may get a good amount of sleep. I may get my 8 hours or my 9 hours. I love to sleep. So I may get my full hours, but if it's the middle of the day and the little eyes twitching, which happened literally yesterday, I know, okay, I am not managing this is a physical response to let me know, hey, you're feeling overwhelmed. Hey, you're stressed out. Maybe there's something that you need to do. Maybe there's something that you have not slowed down enough to be aware of. So I think it's so important that we pay attention to that. So I'll share some statistics with you that she shared. Diagnosis with depression increased 56% since 2001. Considering how many people are here, that's a whole lot of people. Um, the focus is mainly, like I said, symptom relief versus cures. We are the most medicated country on earth. That's what she said in the book. So while everyone else is, whatever they're doing, working through it or ignoring it, whatever, we are the most medicated country on earth. In 2004, 1.6 million children and teenagers, 280,000 of them were under the age of 10, were given 2 or more psychiatric drugs, and some of them in combination, more than one. 1.6 million children. Now, out of that 1.6 million children, did some of them maybe need that? There is a large possibility. But there's also a large possibility that the majority of them needed to be taught how to manage stress, or they live in a very dysfunctional environment, or they were raised in a dysfunctional environment and they have traumas that they need to work through. But the question is, when these medications were prescribed, were they also paired with a therapist that's teaching them how to manage their experiences? Are their parents supportive of them growing in a space where they're learning how to express emotion in a healthy way? Like, these are the questions that she does not have the answer to, but I have questions, because I understand living in a household where there was not a lot of expression of emotion. You weren't really allowed to. It was considered disrespectful, or it was considered, out of place because we were children. Now, as a young, and I told this story in one of my blogs. When I was younger, my mom said to me, she said about me, she was like, yeah, you were a pretty positive kid. You were pretty interactive. You were overachiever, so you were always pushing yourself. But something would happen and you would just get really, really sad. And you would get withdrawn. Like, you wouldn't want to talk to anybody, you wouldn't want to be around people. You would stay in your room with your door closed, and that wasn't your normal behavior. So when I told my therapist that, she was like, oh, you were dealing with depression. She said, how did it feel? I said, well, I would be fine. And then I wouldn't be. It would be like a dark cloud would roll into the room, and it would be heavy. And I would not know what to do with it. Of course, I still got up. I still went to school. I still did my homework, the things I had to do, but I was less motivated. I was more tired. I did not want to deal with people. It was exhausting. And my mother noticed it. There was no name for it then. She didn't have a name for it. And she did her best to kind of pull me out of it with things that she knew to do. But we know now, or I know now, being in an environment where I could not express emotion, it was considered negative to express any emotion but gratefulness and happiness. It caused depression. Why? Because as people, we were given emotions, anger, sadness, happiness. All of those things are natural. Them emotions in themselves are not negative. I'm gonna say that again for the people in the back. Emotions in themselves are not negative. We were given them as a way to express how we feel and where we are. Now, how we express emotion can be negative depending on how we were taught, depending on what we saw. For example, if you live in a home where it was abusive and that is how a person expressed anger, they were not taught how to express anger in a healthy way. And that is not positive. So I say that to say emotions in themselves are natural. They are natural. We are taught that expressing anger or expressing frustration or it was a bad thing, but it's not bad. It's in itself, it is normal to express emotion, but we also have to be taught how to express it in a healthy way. And when we learn that how to express it incorrect, we have to relearn the healthy ways to express. That's what therapy does. It teaches you how to, first of all, be aware of your emotion. How are you feeling? And it was funny because when I started, because I was not good at expressing emotion, I expressed any negative feelings as I'm upset. That I had a general word that encompassed all of my negative feelings. But when I went to therapy and she was like, "How are you feeling?" I don't know how to, I'm angry or I'm upset. But she kind of did a deep dive. Part of my assessment, which was so uncomfortable, was a deep dive into other words to express feeling. There are so many words to express feeling. Maybe I'm angry, but why? Are you disappointed? Do you feel unloved? Do you feel unheard? Do you feel forgotten about? She went into like deep, 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 deep questions with different descriptive words, which taught me how to better express how I felt. So it was no longer upset. I can say I'm angry because I'm disappointed because this person said and did. And I decided not to say something in the moment I should have. Like I can literally talk about emotion. As an adult, I could not do that because no one taught me how to do that and it wasn't allowed. So it's so interesting because as I'm reading this book, I can't help but think about where I was versus where, and I was a part of the happiness culture. I was taught that you are supposed to smile and be happy all the time because if you don't do that, you're not grateful. That's not true. Now, can you express every emotion to everyone, everywhere? No. That's why I said we have to learn how to express emotion in a healthy way. So it was something. So to realize that we are the most medicated country in the world is so much of a reflection of how people see as a whole, not everybody, but majority see expression of emotion as negative. And that's, again, we are not including the people that deal with mental illness. That is not the same. That is on a whole nother, and I'm not in a position to discuss that in detail because I am not a therapist or a psychiatrist. But I will say that is something that is important that we learn. Now, something else that I thought was interesting is she was talking about where antidepressants came from. And you have to read the book to get all the details because I don't even have the time to go into detail. But what she talks about, and again, remember, she works in this industry, how they found a chemical that makes people feel euphoric and positive, and it was some type of fuel. And those scientists who create medications needed what she calls an epidemic to use these meds. And so they marketed this these antidepressants, what they created, to a certain group of people to make us more happy because that was the expectation. And it was something that she said that I'm gonna have to find it because it's important to what we're discussing. It is so important. And I gotta find it because she was talking about the impact on women and how it was seen in that time that women were more depressed than men, but also understanding that I can't find the quote, but I'll discuss it. So she was talking about how in that time women were seen as more depressed than men. Now we can say that many times women were feeling this way because of inequalities, because of their expectation to manage everyone's emotions, because they were expected to be positive and they were seen as bad mothers and bad wives if they weren't positive the majority of the time. And because we were disparaged in a lot of areas as women, we were looked as beneath men, beneath many people, like we weren't a priority. So their solution for this, so we know why we feel this way. So instead of addressing the true issues, equality, opportunity, not feeling like we have to manage everyone else's emotions, not being seen as a bad mother, if our kids are unhappy, our husbands are unhappy, as if we were responsible for their happiness. Instead of solving those issues, their solution was creating a medication, create an epidemic, because there's already a problem. And if we tell people this is the solution to this problem you're experiencing, they'll buy it. But is that not how our culture is now? Fad diets, self-help books, whatever is out there that is, we want quick solutions. So instead of digging into what we knew was an issue, women equality, balance, understanding that one person is not responsible for the happiness of everyone. We're not going to address those issues. This is how it is. This is how it's structured. And this is how it's supposed to be from other people's perspective. So the solution is we'll give you some meds to make you happy about the situations externally that need to change. But isn't that how our world is right now? We want quick solutions. We don't want to do the work. I am currently sore from going to the gym yesterday. But if I'm honest, if there was a real little blue pill that helped me get to the size that I wanted to be, I would take it. But it doesn't exist. When there are real issues, when there are real things that need to change, there are quick fixes don't work. They put a band-aid over it. They make it you feel better in the moment, but you're going to continue to find yourself in that same situation. And that is what was happening. So I thought this chapter, it really made me think, and it made me kind of look at how our world is wired and how we as people are wired and how we really need to learn how to think for ourselves. And we really need to learn that everything that is marketed, everything that is shared, everything that is said is not necessarily true. And there's a large possibility that the motive behind what is being pushed is not pure. It's not everything, but clearly the motive behind creating antidepressants was making money. Is it needed? Yes. Is depression real? Absolutely. Do some people need medication to manage their experiences or their mental health? Most definitely. But we still have to go back to the motive behind it. So that lets us know in mental health, just as much as there are people that are trying to help and support and get us better, there's just as many people trying to take advantage of people that may not research or may not look or want a quick fix. It's dual. And isn't that the case in many things, that just as much as good there can be bad in situations, just as much as benefit there can be things that are drawbacks depending on the motive of whomever is pushing whatever they're pushing. That is a reality we live in. So we have to choose which direction we're going to lean. And I have to say, with my first experience, because I was anti-therapy, I did not grow up in an environment where, that was something we talked about. And I thought that it was mainly for people that dealt with extremely traumatic experiences. Just the things that you see on TV, and people that have, lost parents when they're young, and people that have been taken advantage of. Like, that was my mindset. That's what I was taught. That was my view on it. But what I learned as I went through the process and I stayed open, because I heard someone talk about it, I was talked about it in a different way, and I was like, I experienced that too. Maybe I do need to consider it. But I was adverse to it even when I went. And my therapist knew. I didn't even have to open my mouth. She knew I was adverse. But I'm so glad that I had a person that really cared about me as a person with integrity, a person that I knew if she referred me, she's a licensed therapist, so she can't write medication. But if I was in a situation where I needed it, she would have had to refer me to a psychiatrist. I know she would have referred me to someone. And to this day, if anything were to ever happen, she will refer me to someone that cares about the person. I am not going to medicate first and ask questions first, unless and later, unless it is a life or death situation. I'm going to make sure that you are in need as much as I can with what I am providing, what I am prescribing. So if you decide to go this route, do your best, use discernment, talk to people that have gone through therapy. Do all the things to make sure that the person that you choose cares about you as a person. Just as much as you need a doctor for your natural body, sometimes you need a doctor for your mind. That's why they have licenses, and that's why they go to school, because they learn about development. They learn about how your brain works. They can recognize when there's a chemical imbalance, because we have chemicals that our body develops, and it's supposed to do it naturally. Some people's bodies don't do that. Some people's bodies don't create what's needed so that their minds can operate in the way that it was intended. So all of those things, you need a doctor for your natural body. You may need a doctor for your mind. And that's not bad, and that's okay. It's okay, because they are there to help support you, help you grow, help you develop, help you get the pieces maybe you missed because your parents didn't know, or because the person that raised you didn't have the knowledge that people have now. All of the things. So, my question for you is, what do you think will make you happier? Now, I talked about these things out of order on purpose because I felt like laying that foundation was important, because many times we look for solutions externally, outside, outside ourselves. And many times the solution is internal. So when you read that question, because she asks questions throughout the book, and she adds answers that other people provided when she was studying and when she was researching for this book, and the majority of the answers were external things. The majority of the answers from people were external. So it was more money, that'll make me happier. Professional stability, that'll make me happy. More time to make art, moving to Vermont and having a farm, time to exercise, a good night's sleep, love, children. being 20 pounds lighter, more dancing, less stress. That is what will make me happier. In most cases, your happiness is not determined by external things. However, they can impact how you feel. So what do I mean by that? So I've talked about this, but I'll talk about it again. When I was in my life crisis, what am I doing with my life? What am I supposed to be doing? I was searching purpose. I thought I was discontent because I hadn't figured out what I was supposed to do with my life. I hadn't found my purpose. I didn't know what I was created to do. I was good at a lot of things, but I was a master at nothing. And I knew people that all their life they were passionate. They wanted to be entrepreneurs. They wanted to be dancers. They always knew they wanted to be artists. I never had that. Now, if someone asked me the question, I always gave an answer because I wasn't going to not answer that question because that made me look incompetent. And that was a thing too. But if I'm honest, I never really knew what I wanted to do. I knew what I was good at, but I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And so in that season, I thought I was discontent because I didn't know what I wanted to do. What I later found was I was discontent because of all the internal things that were going on internally that were unresolved. And it's funny because I still work at the same place. I still have the same amount of children. I still live in the same location. I do have a little bit more money, but let's be honest, as your kids get older, they cost more. So do I really I have more money, but am I spending more on myself? Do I have more disposable income? No, more money, but also more responsibilities. So many of those external things that I thought, if I get a promotion, if I figure out what I want to do with my life, if that's gonna make me happy. Those things came and went, and I was still discontent. So that was an indicator that it was something deeper. And I talk about this in our group that if you can look around, nothing is perfect, but if you can look around at your life and be like, kids are cool, marriage is better than, better now, we're more mature, we can make decisions together, I'm happy with where I live. You can look around externally and see like things are the way they're not perfect, but they're good. And you're still unsettled and discontent, then it means it's something deeper. Does it mean you're depressed? Not necessarily. But also, therapists are not just to address things like depression, which is very real. Sometimes they guide you through to help you figure out what it is that you want. Sometimes we are discontent because we don't know what we want. And let's be honest, as people, that is important. I need to know what I want. I need to know what I want to accomplish. I need to know where I want to be. But sometimes it's hard to get to that because of all the other noise that we are surrounded by and that we see and that we're distracted by. So a couple of things I want to encourage you to do. If you can sit here and listen to this and watch this and really think about it, and you are unable to pinpoint what you truly desire, it might be time for you to do some thinking. If you can look around and the majority of things are good, and you have gotten some of the things that you said will make you happy, they have come to you. They're alive and they are well, and you are still discontent, you might want to do some thinking. If you are going to a therapist or a psychiatrist and their initial response, or the doctor, was to address symptoms, but never address the root or the true issue, so cure versus symptoms, you may be going to the wrong person. Because ultimately our goal, our desire, or what most of us desire, a quality of life where we can enjoy our families, that brings us joy. We can enjoy what we do. Maybe it's not our job, but maybe it's what we do as a passion. Where we can build a life where when we look back, we can say, things were never always perfect, but I am happy. I have joy. looking at what I've built, looking at what I've established, looking at what I've put together. But how can you truly do that in your heart if you know that the only things that you're ever willing to address are symptoms versus what the real issues are? So I encourage you today to think about that. Are there areas in your life where you are focused on symptoms, physically, emotionally, or mentally? And what can be done to start the process for a true cure for whatever is ailing you? Because ailments are not just sicknesses in your physical body as far as a cold or flu or headaches or stress or whatever that may be. It's not always a physical thing. Sometimes it's a mental thing. Do you have peace? Can you sit down in a space by yourself, alone, and be okay with it? No, you may not enjoy being alone, but do you have the ability to sit in the space with your own thoughts and have peace? Now, am I saying that negative thoughts don't come to destroy your peace? Absolutely. But if you're sitting in silence and that's all you experience, and so you surround yourself with people and duties and to-do lists so you don't have to sit alone with yourself, symptoms, not a cure. Because out of anybody in the world, friends, family, kids, spouse, you should have the ability to have peace with yourself. Things may not be perfect. There may be things about yourself that you're like, I need to do better. But do you have peace? Can you sit in a space in silence, no phone, no music, no distractions, and have peace? If you can never do that, symptoms versus cure. And that may mean you need to talk to someone. That may mean you need to go to therapy. That may mean you need to do some self-evaluation, because if I can't be comfortable and at peace when I'm alone by myself, how can I truly show up as myself, bringing my best self to the world with others if I can't do that with my own self? And I will tell you, I can say that because that person was me. I liked alone time, but I had to be doing something that occupied space in my mind. I'm an introvert, but don't use that as an excuse to not be connected. I'm an introvert, but I am relational because I understand I need connection. As people, we need connection. We need love. We need to feel loved. We need to feel heard. We need to feel seen. It's something about the human experience where that's important. Introvert or not, introvert just means I refuel by myself, but I enjoy being around people. Extrovert, my husband, he refuels around activity and people, but he understands the importance of alone time. It serves its purpose, just like I understand the importance of connection. So I encourage you to think about the things that I discussed. Think about those things. No challenge this week besides continue your joy journal, which I will do better this week. But I encourage you to think about some of those things because I really believe it will help you in the long run. So if happiness, let's find our joy, because joy lasts. Happiness is for a moment, but joy lasts. And I don't know about you, but I'm trying to live a life full of joy, even though things are not perfect around me. That is my goal. I want to really have joy in my heart and enjoy what is around me, what I've built, what I've invested my time in. I don't want life to just pass me by and rush me by. And I look back and I don't have any good memories because I wasn't present. I did it. I may see a picture, but I have no connection with those moments because I was not present. So I'm not looking for fleeting happiness. And that's what she's talking about in the book. Yeah, artificial happiness or appearing happy. No, I desire, and I hope you too, you do too, desire joy, something that will last and something that will cover your heart and your mind when things get difficult. Momentary happiness does not surpass difficult times, but joy, you can find laughter and you can enjoy your family and still find areas where you can look and say, this may be bad. This is not enjoyable. But you know what? This is good. So I will leave you with that. I look forward to meeting with you all next Tuesday. It's going to be a good time, and we will be in week 4. And what we will cover, we're transitioning to the next section, and we will be covering the title of the section is Grumpy Nuns Die Young, Women and the Science of Joy. So we'll cover pages 83 through 121. So have an amazing week. Write down the things that bring you joy, and we will talk next week. Bye.